I want to take some time to establish just a few norms for our conversation together. The first, I think, goes without saying. We need to be respectful of teacher. Teachers don't normally bring their work to the table, their students' work, in such a public way, particularly work that's ongoing, particularly work about which one has a question. And so we want to attend to being respectful in our comments. We also want to make sure, I think, that we all contribute to substantive discourse. And by that I mean, let's resist offering only blanket praise or sort of silence. Let's be really specific. And so if things are working well, let's say exactly how we think it's working well. If we've got some constructive criticism to offer, let's be really specific in how we offer that. And then finally, let's remember that what we want to do here is offer feedback in such a way that it's credible, that it's usable, that it's actionable. Because our job here is to give feedback that a teacher can actually use. The other thing that I hope happens is that we sort of indirectly get feedback on our own practice. All right, Chicha, you have the floor.
What you're going to see are students seated in groups of 4, which is the norm for the classroom, in going over the work that they have been assigned to do the night before. And it's particularly a group of questions. There are 8 questions that are dealing with the concept of scientific notation. And importantly, they are taken from the real world. And students have access to technology. They have access to a graphing calculator. It is part of the Interactive Mathematics program, which is an integrated high school program, college preparatory mathematics, problem-based. We are very close to the end of the unit in this particular lesson, and it's a unit that's entitled All About Alice. And the metaphor is taken from Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, in particular her predicament in which she grows, and she eats an ounce of cake, and she grows, and then she drinks an ounce of beverage, and she gets smaller. And this is tied into... Let's see. I'm interested, as you watch the video, that you notice how the students are communicating. Not just communicating with me, how they're communicating with each other. What they're saying, what is the depth of their mathematical content? How much do they understand? And then, more importantly, from when I listen to what they say, what can I glean as to did they learn what I thought I taught them? If that is making any sense. There's a portion in there that I'd like you to pay attention to. They do something called a focused free write. It is a way to put on paper the thoughts that are in your mind. So the communication that is going on between the students and between me and to the classroom is what I have a particular interest in trying to turn that into a form of assessment.
Chicha, you said that you wanted us to look at whether or not they learned what you thought you had taught them. Could you say in one sentence the outcome of this particular lesson, what you hoped would happen?
The ability to use scientific.
I just want to make explicit right now, she's asked a particular question that will help focus us. So she wants to know, did they learn what she thought that she had taught them? It has to do with the ability to use scientific notation. And she wants us to notice how they communicate mathematically. How are they communicating what it is they know in terms of the math? While the majority of the work that we'll see today will be in the form of video, I also wanted to make it clear that when teachers bring work to the table, it's often not in video format. And so it's paper and pencil work, it's written work, math and science work, graphs, tables, diagrams. But today we will be seeing most of the work in video format. Okay, so let's take a look at the first part of Chicha Students at Work.
Would you take out last night's homework? And we had 4 problems entitled Homework 14, 4 problems entitled Lots and Lots of Them. Let's start by talking to your groups and sharing with your groups what you did on last night's, what was difficult, and what you could not do. And I'll walk around the room, and you can see if you have any other questions for me, and we'll see who would like to present. Let's take about, a few minutes now to talk about our problems. All right.
Our problem was light travels at a speed of approximately 186,000 miles per second. In a light year is the distance.
Now what we're going to do is move into 5 minutes of clarifying questions. Clarifying questions are simply questions that are matters of fact. And so information that we need in order to give Chicha the kind of feedback that will be useful to her. We won't be able to know everything there is about the class. And so at about 5 minutes of questions, I'm actually going to say, okay, that's enough, and let's move on to the feedback.
When they're working in groups, are there guidelines to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, or are there roles and tasks that they play within that group of 4 or 5?
At this point, they're in their second year of the interactive program. So when they enter into the interactive program in the first year, we spend quite a bit of time on how do groups interact.
Go into our feedback session and just remind us that what Chicha wants us to attend to, what she wants us to focus on, is how students communicate mathematically. She also wants us to attend to the depth of students' mathematical content. In this instance, their ability to use and apply scientific notation. She wants to know how can she figure out how much they understand. All right, so that's sort of that's the focus of our comments in this session. Try and think about dividing your comments into warm comments and cool comments. And so, and again, the warm comments are comments that speak to what are the strengths here. I mean, what do you see happening that you think Chicha can build on in terms of her focusing questions? Warm feedback is critical because it's difficult to make changes and make improvements in practice if you don't know the strengths of the teaching or the strengths of the student work, because then that's your base. I mean, that's the foundation upon which to build and to make further changes and improvements. And so we don't want to shortchange the warm feedback. And then where are the gaps? I mean, what do you think the things that she could think about more? We will add a part to the conversation for, hard questions or probing questions or whatever, questions that we want to leave Chicha with that aren't clarifying, but they will actually stop you, hopefully, cause you to stop and think. The questions that you'll be thinking about in the cab on the way to the airport. Chicha, this is when you get to relax, so to speak. I mean, right. You take notes. We're going to say a lot that won't make any sense, or you'll. And so this is your chance to just reflect with us what of significance we said, or what of significance did you learn? Yeah.
Well, there's always something that really jumps at you and comes and says, aha, there it is. But one of them was to continue with this progression of do your homework and come back and talk it over with the groups, and then collaborate as to the answers that you came back with, and that's not cheating. You didn't go home and do your homework, and now you get to come back to school and you're going to cheat amongst your group. And no one saw it as just exchanging answers. Thank you very much.
Let's talk about the process itself. And Chicha, you can talk from the point of view of the presenting teacher, and we'll all talk as participants. How did you think it went?
I think that using a protocol helps you get to a depth in the conversation that you may not get to if you weren't using the protocol. It really pushes you. The warm and cool feedback, but particularly when you're coming up with those hard questions and those probing questions that would be beneficial for you to be thinking about, as you're leaving. I think that the protocol helps you move along to get to that level of conversation.
Yeah.
I think the protocols are also very helpful in terms of connecting student work with teacher instruction.
Right.
And I think very often teachers don't realize that by looking at student work